Hey, this week to Be the Church podcast, super special guest for Father's Day weekend. My daughter, Olivia, is joining us. Check it out. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we explore what it means to truly be the church in today's culture. I am Andrew. As you learned last week, I am hosting this bad boy, the To Be the Church podcast, over this summer of 2023 without my cohorts, Tyler and Benjamin. They are both sabbaticaling and resting with their families. And so, this is going to be a great summer. We explored it a little bit last week, obviously, but different guests each week. And in honor of the Father's Day weekend coming up here, I have decided to invite a very special guest today only on the To Be the Church podcast, unless, this becomes a thing. So, hello over there. Can you state your full name for the record?
Olivia Murch.
Your full name?
Olivia Joy Murch.
Joy Murch. Okay. And Livy, how old are you?
15.
And what is the nature of your relationship with the To Be the Church podcast host?
Very good.
Okay. It's very good. Okay. But what is the nature of your relationship?
What do you mean?
You're my daughter.
Oh.
I'm your father.
Okay. I didn't get that.
Okay. It's cool, man. We're working it out. It's To Be the Church podcast. So, Liv, I thought it'd be fun to interview you. Okay. So, great. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
What does being the church mean to you?
Well, being a part of, why are you smiling like that?
Just because it's my face.
Okay, well, being the church is like, we're people together, serving together in Christ community.
Excellent. All right, I want to get, we got to start with that because it's called the To Be the Church podcast. I want to get a little bit of a narrative from you on your unique perspective. So you are the oldest of my children, okay? Mm-hmm. And how many children do I have? 4. Yes, and they're all girls, and you're the oldest of the bunch. So in case the listeners didn't know that, I want to talk about your journey as a pastor's kid and just what that's like, and so unique perspective, obviously. So you got to Northwest Gospel Church when you were 3 years old. Okay? You just turned 3 when we moved here in late 2010. So, do you remember our old church? Mm-hmm. What do you remember about it?
Well, I just remember one vivid memory, which is like me and Sophie were toddlers and we're in our class, and her class got to watch VeggieTales, but mine didn't. And I was really upset about that. So we just talked, and I saw her in the other room watching VeggieTales, and I really wanted to watch it.
That's your memory of our old church.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we were at a church up in Olympia. So that's your total. That's like, so the first 3 years of your life being dedicated there, all your nursery memories. That's the one, right?
Yeah.
Would you categorize that as trauma in the church?
No.
Okay, so I was just wondering. That's a thing these days. Care. Okay. So you're not scarred from that at all?
No.
Okay. You got nothing against our church up in Olympia other than the way they treat the 3-year-old class? No. Okay.
No, I really didn't care. I just wanted to watch it.
Yeah. Okay. So we moved down here in 2010. You had just turned 3. And what's your earliest memory of Northwest Gospel Church?
I think I remember when I was like in the 4s and 5s class, there was these 2 people and this one guy. I would always be really like shy to come in the class, and then this one guy would always come and play with ponies with me for like half an hour, and then
in the nursery.
Like
another nursery kid?
No, like the guy who worked there.
Oh, okay.
He was like the teacher, and he would just like bring me in and play with the ponies with me.
Yeah.
And then I would kind of like break into it. And
that was like
play.
An early nursery memory. Okay.
Yeah.
So the nursery years, you would have been in the nursery 2 or 3 years, right? Until you were like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
You didn't get held back in nursery at all.
No.
They're like, she's not ready. Leave her in here. So any other memories of the nursery?
Other than like playing with the other kids, and it was really weird.
Yeah. Weird? What was weird
well,
about
like, just like kids were like, doing kid stuff in nursery, fighting over toys or just being weird and goofy or crying really loud.
You work in the nursery now, that same nursery that you came up through. So what's the difference in being like a constituent versus being a worker? The clientele versus...
Well, I feel older because like I remember thinking of like somebody my age back then was like really, really old. So I feel like I love it when the kids come up to me and are like, teacher, I need help. I'm like, yes, you do.
Yes, you certainly do. Okay, so you went from there into kids' church. At the time, what do you remember about getting into kids' church and kindergarten?
I remember when my first day, something super embarrassing happened to me. Well, I thought it was super embarrassing at the time. They had this game where it was like the loser would get shaving cream in the face by the winner of the game.
Okay.
And the kids had gone up there to like, the kindergartners would have gotten up there and they would get this little bag and everything. And I thought some guy was like talking about the game and how like that's explaining what would happen at the end. And I thought I was like gonna get shaving cream in my face, and so I like yelled at the top of my voice, I don't want to get shaving cream in my face. And
You're
the guy
like a
was
kindergartner?
like, yeah.
Oh my
and
goodness.
the guy was like, no, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so embarrassing.
Oh, that's funny. So elementary age. I mean, who was the kids pastor when you got here? Was Michael the kids pastor? Anderson?
No, what was it? Vanessa.
Vanessa was over the kids. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
and then it went to Michael.
And then somebody. Like, it kind of just like
A
floated
few different
around.
people. Yeah. Until you were out of there by the time Gabby took over, right? Yeah.
I think Sophie might have been out of there too, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So cool. So the and then tribes, middle school years.
I remember I was in 5th grade. I just was so excited to get out of there because I was just like really tall and I didn't like being bigger than everyone
You felt like you'd outgrown elementary. Yeah.
And so like I remember the first time I was so excited. I went into tribes and I just like stopped dead in the door because it was all these big kids that I'd seen in kids' church, but they like grew really large. And then Courtney had to push me in to get me in the room because I was so freaked out. And then I remember my friends, they're all like these little 6th graders that I didn't really know them really well because I would hang out with everybody all the kids that worked with you, like their parents would work with you. And so like I didn't really know them very well. So, they just came out and they're like, Olivia. And they're like, I just remember them like snaking through and ducking under all the middle schoolers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we like hid in the corner. And then tribes, my first year of tribes was a nightmare to me because it was like, with tribes you got separated, so like all the girls that I had barely known were not in my tribe.
Yeah.
And the only person in my tribe was this dorky middle school guy who I knew.
Who probably listens to the podcast now. And
anyway,
we won't mention names.
Anyway, but at the time he was pretty weird, but so that was kind of helpless. And so like during that kind of just like taught me how to go up to other people, and it was so funny because recently when we had our 8th grade thing last year, and then they were talking about like the 8th graders helping with the 6th graders and planning the party and everything, it was like the 8th graders should go up to the 6th graders. And I remember turning to my friend and be like, when I was in 6th grade, I was going up to the 8th graders.
Sure.
Because like, I just had to like push through to make some friends.
But the culture's changing. But I think it's cool to hear that your dad's the lead pastor. By the time you got into 6th grade, you had been here at the church for like 9 years, right?
Yeah.
And yet that was a super rough year because you just didn't and I remember as your dad, but like you didn't know people, you hadn't made friends, and so let's go from there into you just finished your freshman year now, but like let's kind of pivot from that into this idea of being a pastor's kid. Like, what would you say? Like being a pastor's kid, and I mean, your whole experience of this, other than the VeggieTales trauma from early at our old church, like your whole experience in church is basically Northwest Gospel Church. So, although it was Life Point Church, obviously, when we first got here, and then it changed. But this context, this building that we're in right now, like this is your whole experience pretty much in church. And so, being a pastor's kid, like how would you describe that in this context?
Well, I like it because it's like, I mean, when I was younger, it was just really cool that, your dad was the pastor, and so
Why?
I was like, I don't know.
Did that have to do with the coolness of your dad, or was it like?
Yes.
Is it like, or is that just a thing?
It can be if you want it to be.
Am I cool?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we'll use this content. All right, keep going. So yeah. You thought it was cool when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when I got older, like around actually middle school, it was like I realized like the team that keeps this church and like the leadership, and like the people who work here, it's like, wow, this is a really unique church, because growing up here and having this my only church, it was like I didn't really know the other kinds of churches that were around. Like I always thought like this was just a regular thing, church. Like this is just a regular kind of church, like all churches were like this one. So like the older I got and the more like I would hear about like stuff that was going on, and it was like, wow, this is like this is a blessing to be a part of this and get to see like the background on how this is like getting together,
Yeah. Wow. So what you describe it being cool and then kind of coming to this realization of like the uniqueness of our church and kind of the whole team of leadership and the different kinds of things here. Describe that a little bit more. And when you say hearing things going around, I'm assuming you mean like you'll have friends that will come to our church from other churches as you're getting older and you'll hear stories of other churches and just, is that what you mean?
Well, more of like how like there's just how like the older I get, the more that it's more complicated than just like, come to church and like just like I love God and God loves me and that's it. Like
Sure.
The older I get, the more it's like it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, how so?
Sense.
Just the
like,
culture around us or
like,
the world, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I actually remember the first time I found out that hell was a thing. It was like, since I was probably like 6 maybe, I don't know, a little older. But I was like...
And was that like when I was disciplining you for something? I was just kidding.
Nah, we had this thing where it was like with Mom and me and Sophie and Millie, I think was like a baby. But like a long time ago, like we would all like just be at the kitchen table and be drawing pictures together about like what we picture heaven like, the Bible time for homeschooling,
Sure.
Like, and I remember like thinking about how I think it was like, yeah, when you die you go to heaven, and that was like, it was just like that was it, like, Jesus loves me, you die and you go to heaven and everything's happy, and then Mom was like, well, I remember in my mind I had like pictured heaven, it was like on the cloud, and like as she was talking it like zoomed out and then there was like this pit of like
destruction
death.
And fire.
Yeah, I was like in my
Wailing.
mind, like my imagination, it was like heaven just like it like zoomed out and then it was like there's another place down there and it like freaked me out. But yeah, so I like was so scared and that put the fear in me in that day. But
The fear of God in you.
yeah, the fear.
Shortly thereafter, she was baptized. I'm just kidding.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, so, but like how like the older I get, the more it's like, then I realize like the world isn't a happy place, you know, like, and it like, kind of like you see like how things really are, you know,
Yeah.
and like as I'm being a teenager and how like, you know, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Kind of like you see how things really are instead of how they appear to be, you know?
In the world, and then reflect on the church, because that's how you got into this whole subject.
Yeah.
So
like with this church is like, I've heard a lot of stories with like people like just don't have good leaderships, like from you, you know, like stories you would say, you know, how like there's been churches
as you've gotten older, obviously. Yeah. I've told you those stories. Yeah.
Like just leaderships that were not good, people who were just kind of, you know, just, I remember like a sermon you did where you were quoting somebody who was like, I think it was the last sermon you did, where it was like the people crying out about the pastor who was like
John Bunyan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like poor leaderships like that in churches that were like you, stories you've told about when you first got here, you know, like about how you went to that men's Bible study and they got up and said the Pledge of Allegiance.
Uh-oh. Shots fired.
Anyway, but like just like,
I didn't tell you that when that was happening, but years later we reflected on it.
I was like 3 when that was happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was like a month ago when you were telling me about this again. Anyway, but
so it makes you grateful for this church? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, it's like I kind of just took it for granted until I was like hearing all of the stuff about, you know, worldly stuff like that.
Yeah. So describe Northwest Gospel Church. Put some words to it.
Very pure, I would say. You know, like with like the elders, and it's like it feels like a safe place, you know, with like how like I've even seen it where like, you know, stuff you would say about like stories and people that had like, you know, had come up and said things, you know, and so it's like with like it feels like a safe place, you know, like just growing up here and all that all that stuff, it feels like you know, I don't have to be afraid to like to be like a sinful human. You know, I can like breathe here, you know, and I can tell you I'm your daughter.
You started it. No, just kidding. I think I started it. Yeah. For the audio listeners, you know, as happens at the To Be the Church podcast, at times there are tears. So
I did not expect this to happen when I walked in this room.
Keeping it light. But no, I think when you describe what's going on in my mind and heart, as you describe the church that way, you know, as like a PK and as like, and I know that you're not just saying that for the podcast, obviously, you know, I'm like, in fact, before the listeners to TBTC Church will know this, but like before I thought of this idea. Livy has an orthodontist appointment today. And so I brought her in to work with me, and then we're going to go to that appointment where she might get braces later today. But like on the way in, I was thinking about, dude, Father's Day's coming up. We got to record some episodes, you know, with Tyler and Ben and them guys out. So I was like, man, I'll just have Olivia on the podcast. And so, you know, half hour before we started recording, you're like, Dad, should we prepare? And I'm like, do you ever listen to the To Be the Church podcast? You just start talking. So yeah, I think, and you just see where it goes. And yet, like, as you describe this church, I know that to be true, everything that you're saying. But it's like, it's so crazy and beautiful what the Lord has done here and is doing here, you know? So, and, like Lola, your little sister who's 8, in case you didn't know who that is, Viola, she was, Carissa, who listener will know probably is my wife. And in case you didn't know, Livy, that's my wife and your mother. Carissa and Viola were playing Hangman in my office 2 or 3 Wednesdays ago. You guys were at Wednesday at church, and I think Viola was waiting for her class to start, and they were playing Hangman on my whiteboard. And Carissa sends me a picture of it, and I was traveling. I think I was out of town. But she sent me a picture of the Hangman game at the end. And Viola, who's 8, it just can't spell very many words yet, but she had done a 4-word phrase. And the shot is Viola's handwriting and the little hangman that looks all weird, and then all the letters in the whole game. And it's spelled out, "I love the church."
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And Carissa sent it to me as just this is so beautiful, right? That idea that the 8-year-old, getting ready for her Wednesday night class is playing hangman with her mom and on the whiteboard, and "I love the church" is what is on her heart, and I think and so the stuff you're describing is our church. And even as you're saying all this, I'm preparing for a class that I'm teaching soon here on leadership that's going to go into the past, present, and future of Northwest Gospel Church leadership and just the church itself. And so I've been reflecting on our 85-year history this morning in preparation for that, and kind of telling the stories over the years of the history before I got here, and then the history, and the revitalization and the different things we've gone through. And just to hear you at 15, who it's the only church you've known, and you've been embedded here, almost your whole life, that's the way you would describe this church. That's like a miracle, and is a really beautiful reality. And so okay, I want to pivot one other direction before we end. So who's your favorite preacher? And also, remember, Father's Day is Sunday.
Okay. My favorite preacher is...
Don't say it. Go ahead.
Who do you think I was going to say?
No, Josh
I know,
Lane.
I happen to...
Josh Lane. Don't say Josh Lane.
I happen to know you're only prejudiced towards Noah because he's a better Catan player than you are.
Whoa, what just happened? Do we edit Catan?
Is it Catan or Catan?
It's Catan, even though he mispronounces it. So, dude, this needs to be stricken from the record, but we're going to leave it in, okay? And I'm going to take it out on Noah the next time we play Catan. Okay, so, or as he would say, Catan. Okay, so no, real question, real final question. I can't believe you said that. Hardest part of being a pastor's kid?
I guess, it kind of, there was a friend of mine who, she first 3 years I knew her, she hated me because I was a pastor's kid, until she realized when she really knew me at camp and stuff, she found out, she was like, "You're the sweetest person I ever know."
Okay.
So kind of people judge you.
Ooh, yeah.
Before they get to know you, and it's just kind of, whatever, it's
sure,
if you're judging me, you're not the kind of person I want to be around.
Yeah.
But, people.
Sure.
Yeah. Just that kind of thing. It's funny, though, because me and Sophie are always laughing about how, people we don't know would come up to us and be like, "Hey, how are you?"
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
"Hey,
Yeah.
Hi there."
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because people, they hear stories about you from the front in sermons and have since you were babies. And so they assume they know more about you. And then the judging thing's a funny one because you get that not just as a pastor's kid, but you definitely get that as a pastor. That's part of being in ministry is that. And what it is it's not anything toward you personally, that, but it's toward the role. It's like they have been at previous churches and had a bad pastor or something. And so when they see me up there, or if they see something or hear something from me that reminds them of a different pastor, it can bring up that baggage, right? And that can get applied to the family as well, And so that's an interesting thing. Yeah. Wow. Cool. Liv, you did a great job. And yeah. What else you got?
You are my favorite pastor.
All right. Father's Day weekend complete, along with some cake. And that's it. To Be the Church podcast, we're going to call that a wrap. And thank you, Olivia Joy Murch, for joining us this time. And we'll see you again real soon. Okay. That's Mickey Mouse's sign off, isn't it? In the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. See you real soon. Yeah, anyway.
Probably.
All right. There we go. That's it.